Hello everyone, back tuning in today's third video doing a CFS 6 month look ahead for today's first video. So as the name suggests on the tin, we're going to go 6 months ahead with the long range CFS V2 model. And this is just for fun. It's taking us from November next month through to April 2019. So it will cover the full winter 2018-2019 period. Just say that today's first two videos, so the first video today was of course week ahead forecast, as well as on a Saturday having your detailed look ahead for the week ahead. And then the second video today on the homepage, here on the homepage, just scroll down the page and you'll find it above the snow desk. So that is looking at the weather for the next week to 10 days, your regular week to 10 day weather video musing. So have a look at that, see what you think. As I say, this CFS 6 month look ahead, I'll go with that for you very shortly. Just say what's coming up tomorrow at Gazovis. So tomorrow we've got a busy day. We've got the 8th winter 2018-19 update. Going to be a bit of an ENSO special, that one. Our analogs package this week is for ENSO, so some quite interesting charts in with that. Also tomorrow we're going to have the third Christmas update. That's written, not video. And also tomorrow the third update will be the seasonal update from the ECMWF and Metro France season models. That again will be covering the full winter period. So a lot of really interesting long range content coming up at the website tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying this big weekend of updates at Gazovis. So, down with CFS 6 month look ahead after all that plugging done. So, we're going to start off with 700 millibar height anomalies from the CFS V2 for the next 6 months. Then we'll have a look at the corresponding temperature and finally the corresponding precipitation anomalies that go with those heights. So we're going to begin by having a look at November's 700 millibar height anomaly. This is the 700 millibar height anomaly for next month, November 2018. And if everything's working correctly, this should be the most reliable of all of this, really, because it's only 1 month away. So we see that for November, CFS V2 is placing an area of below average heights to west and northwest of the British Isles. It looks really quite unsettled, that, with above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic. And this is bringing through a westerly flow from the Atlantic into the UK and much of Northern Europe. So here we go again. CFS V2 is off and running with a very Atlantic-driven, very zonal type pattern. Wet and windy November coming up, if that is right. This is how December's looking, and, well, again, very, very Atlantic-driven indeed. Big area of above-average height stretched through the Atlantic into much of Central Europe. Then we've got the below-average heights around Greenland, Iceland, and out into the Atlantic. The flow with the jet coming across the Atlantic into the UK like that. Again, it looks a very wet, windy, potentially stormy month. A little bit more high pressure for the south, so perhaps reasonably dry, I suppose, in the south. But overall, very Atlantic driven and probably very mild as well. The air really is driving in from off the Atlantic. So it looks mild, wet and windy in both November and December with CFS 6 months look ahead for this month. And then we go through to January, this first month of 2019, of course. And again, we've got the below average heights out to the northwest. Although they are weakening, we're losing some of the low pressure out to the northwest. We've got above average heights rising just to the southwest and south of the country. So high pressure is down to the south. Low pressure is up to the north. And that's sending the jet stream up north as well. So it's drying out, but it's still very, very mild. This is probably the mildest of all of it, really, because we're dragging up the air probably from the central parts of the Atlantic Ocean. So the wet and windy stuff eases off. It turns drier, but very mild conditions with the air drawn up from the central Atlantic. That's February, and a little bit of a change takes place then. We lose that area of above average heights down to the south-west of the country. It goes much further south into the Mediterranean. We've got below average heights over and to the north of the UK. So it does look quite unsettled, this. It looks more unsettled again in February. Probably still quite mild with a westerly flow, although you notice we are starting to see some above average heights building up over Greenland. So possibly just signs something a little bit cooler turning up in February. But bear in mind, this is 4 months away, so we are now in the just for fun part of the update. Very, very unreliable, to say the least. That's how March is looking. March does show a change. We've got above average heights building around Greenland, so there is a blocking signal there to our north with below average heights through the middle of the Atlantic. We've got some ridging over the central part of the Mediterranean and into the east of the Med with a trough over Scandinavia. So when we look at the temperature anomalies, it's going to show mild for March, but I think that does hold the coldest potential. We could start to squeeze down some quite cold air from the north in that kind of situation in March. Whenever you get high pressure appearing around Greenland, things will start to get interesting. You can still have it mild in the UK and Ireland with a Greenland high, but it's quite unusual to do that, especially late in the winter. If you get high pressure building around Greenland, it will probably turn quite cold. That's 5 months away, though, so again, it's so unreliable. And then we go through to April. And again, we still have this signal for above average heights around and just to the south of Greenland with below average heights over to the east of the country. So again, you will think that could be squeezing down the air from the north and the northwest. So looking at the progression that we've got here, obviously November, December, very Atlantic driven, probably quite stormy, wet and windy. January, again, Atlantic driven, but a little bit more of an anticyclonic influence. So those 3 months really appear to go together with one another. This November, December, January, months 1, 2, 3. They look like they're a trilogy of months really that are very Atlantic driven one way or another. Looks to me like things change in February. It's month 4, so it's a long way out, but this could be maybe through a sudden stratospheric warming, something like that the model is picking up on. But we get to month 4, February, it's not anywhere near as clear-cut Atlantic driven. And whilst it probably is still a mild, unsettled month, it looks like some sort of change is taking place in February. And then we go through to March and to April, and they're the two that are suggesting the blocking high pressures around Greenland, which possibly leads us into a much colder spell as we get through into the spring. Probably not what most people want when you get to spring, I have to say. But that's what CFS 6 Month Look-Ahead is showing this month in terms of its height anomalies. Now, don't expect the temperature anomalies to necessarily be stacking up with that. So this is a temperature anomaly for November once again, and we see that most parts of Europe are coming out warmer than average. It's warmer than average through France, through Germany, through Central Europe. It's warmer than average through Scandinavia as well. A little bit milder than average for some parts of England. But actually, the UK and Ireland, one of the cooler places in Europe, really. And we've got all of this low pressure in the Atlantic out to the north and the west of the country. And we're bringing in that strong Atlantic flow. So it does look a pretty wet and windy month. But I suppose the air could be coming from the northern part of the Atlantic, which would explain why the temperature anomaly isn't all that warm for the UK and for Ireland. Nevertheless, this is a very Atlantic-driven month that we're seeing here for November. That's December. Look how mild it is in December. So it looks like we're dragging in those long fetched southwesterly winds once again, blasting in from the tropical Atlantic, going all the way into Svalbard and Siberia and right up into the north. So it's just a sea of red in December with CFS V2. Again, this month, exceptionally mild month is being forecast once again through most parts of Europe. In fact, it's warmer than average from the extreme west over to as far east and north as we can go. So an exceptionally mild December coming up there. And it goes on into January. Actually, December is milder than January, which is a little bit surprising, as I thought it looked like in January we're dragging up the air from the tropical Atlantic. But we're probably doing it in both December and January, really. So again, month 3, January 2019, getting the year off to a very mild start. Most places, again, coming out significantly warmer than average in January. And then that's February, another exceptionally mild month. It's get behind the sage long time again for anybody that wants a colder winter. February, again, looking exceptionally mild across most parts of Europe. Really brutal charts for those cold lovers and snowmantics that are watching the video. This is March. We're at month number 5 now, so we're in the realm of just for fun, but it's still managing to go for exceptionally mild temperatures across most parts of Europe, and quite how that goes along with this 500 millibar height anomaly for March. I'm really not sure how all parts of Europe are coming out warmer than average with a ridge over Greenland. I suppose that ridge across southeastern Europe would be bringing up some quite warm air, but you think that will be going into the east of Europe, really. You wouldn't really expect that to be impacting things in the northwest. So quite how CFS is coming up with such an exceptionally warm month in March, based on the 500 millibar height anomaly. I'm not sure, but again, it is going for a very mild month through most parts of Europe again in March. April cools things down. Finally, we get to April, we're starting to lose all of those red and orange colours. It is still warmer than average in the east and the southeast of Europe, but in the north and in the west, actually, we're going back closer to average. But that's 6 months away, so, like I said again, it's just for fun. And finally, we get the precipitation anomaly, so we come back to November again for precipitation. This is how November is looking. A wet month being predicted in November. Not surprising, we've got all that low pressure out to the north and the northwest of the British Isles, and we're bringing in the winds from off the Atlantic as well. So a wet month for UK, for Ireland, for France as well. Belgium, Holland coming out wetter than average in those areas. Then we're into December. So what we see happening in December is that southern Europe is turning drier. So that's the reason December is so very, very mild, because high pressure is building into southern Europe. Notice in the west and the northwest, the British Isles, it's still very wet, and so with the high pressure down here and then the low pressure up there and the active jet stream dragged up from southwest, that's the reason those long fetched southwesterly winds that December is so exceptionally mild. January shows a drying trend, so we find those drier than average precipitation anomalies across southern Europe moving northwards into parts of southern England. The wet weather then with the jet stream is being pushed further northwards. So, I mean, it's probably a bit more of an anticyclonic month, which maybe explains why the temperature anomaly in January isn't as warm as it is in December, because although we're very much on the mild side of the jet stream, we are under a ridge which will probably be providing some frost and fog, I suppose. But this is not a cold pattern by any means that we've got for January, because the high pressure is centred down here. High pressure's through there somewhere, and that means that with the low pressure up here and the jet stream up there as well, we're on the mild side of the jet stream. So any cooler conditions that did occur in January would be through inversion type cold, frost and fog, rather than anything particularly Arctic or Siberian based. February turns more unsettled again, so it's above average with the precipitation for February. February's a funny old month on this update. I think it looks like some sort of change is happening within the 700 millibar heights, but in terms of the temperature and precipitation anomalies, it still looks rather Atlantic driven, to say the least. So a mild wet February being forecast there. That's March, and again, for March, remember, the 500 millibar height anomaly in March looks like that. So it is still quite unsettled. There's still low pressure close to the country. You'd expect an unsettled month. We've got the blocking signal around Greenland. The CFS isn't forecasting that to have too much impact on us, so still mild and wet in March, above average precipitation there. And even April coming out a little bit above average with precipitation. But you'll notice the most intense anomalies in terms of rainfall be moved into Central Europe. So a bit of a drying trend for April and signs of things going a little bit cooler or colder. We won't worry about the spring months at this point. So let's come back and sum it all up in terms of the next 3 or 4 months. So, well, I think I've got a pair or a trilogy of very similar months, really. So November, December, definitely very Atlantic driven, wet and windy, particularly for the north and for the west too. Long fetch southwesterlies setting in December, bringing the air up all the way from the tropical Atlantic, so exceptionally mild, wet November and December. And then go through to January. It looks drier, but it will still be a very mild month. And then beyond that, it looks like the pattern changes quite a bit, especially as we get through to months 5 and 6. The change probably taking place through February. So the late winter into spring period does see heights rising over Greenland. CFS V2 is an interesting map producing any cold weather, but of course that's so far away that you wouldn't expect the model, which is very mild, very warm biased, you wouldn't expect it to be picking up anything particularly cold in months 4, 5 and 6 anyway. So it's not a great, to say the least, it's not a great update if you want a cold winter, but that's what model is showing. We can only say what it shows. And again, another month that is showing a very mild, wet, Atlantic-driven, at least first half to the winter, and then maybe something a little bit different in terms of the pattern anyway, as we get through to the latter part of the winter. So that's it. That's your updates for Saturday. Been a busy old day. Tomorrow, as I say, we've got the 8th Winter 2018-19 update. We're going to have a look at the ECM and Meteo France season models as well tomorrow. And also we'll have that written update for Christmas as well. Big day of updates. I'm going to have to be cracking on with all of that. So that's all for now at 16, nearly 17 minutes. That's all for now for CFS Six Month Look-Ahead. Just for fun. And thanks for watching.